Welcome to this video, Year 8 students. We are going to be looking at expanding brackets in this video. Our learning intention is to be able to understand what that process of expanding is and be able to explain in words what expanding looks like. We also want to be able to accurately expand brackets, so not just talk about doing it. And we want to this year start looking at expanding where we have some negative numbers involved. So that could be, say, a number that's outside the bracket, but it could also be one of the terms inside the bracket. So in year 7, we did a little bit of expanding. So some of this will be familiar to you, but most likely we would have just worked with positive numbers when we're in year 7. Some of the success criteria for this will be that you'll be able to multiply both terms inside the bracket by the number on the outside of the bracket, because that's really the process that we're going to see happens when we expand. But you're going to explain why we do that. And you're also going to be able to, I guess, step by step, take me through that process and be able to explain that to me, why you have done what you have done. If you have a look here, just here in the green and in the blue, this is called the Distributive Law. So this is, I guess, like a summary of what we're going to be doing, but a summary that doesn't use any numbers in it. It uses pronumerals. It uses pronumerals or letters that will represent numbers. So if you have a look here, I've got 2 brackets, and this process that we see happening is expanding. So in terms of what expanding actually is, just as a reminder, it is the process of rewriting an expression. So we're not changing what the value of that expression is. I'll just get a pen. And that's what's really important. We're writing something that's equivalent. So we're rewriting an expression, but we're doing that without the bracket. So we will come across many expressions that will include brackets. But for the purpose of solving equations, we're going to see how important it is that we can expand so that we can remove that bracket, and that will then allow us to basically to solve just like we have done in previous lessons. So, like I said, we want to be able to explain this process here, but we don't want to be able to do it just with pronumerals, as we can see in the distributive law. We want to be able to do this with numbers. So we want to be successful in our expanding process. So I'm going to show you now just some examples of how we expand. With this really basic one here, I'm going to show you why we do what we do. So why is it that we are going to multiply this term here by the number out the front, but also this term, the second term, we're going to multiply that by 5 as well. So just with this one, because it's all positives, thought that would be the best way to basically show you what's happening. Say I had 5 bags. Now, I'm not very good at drawing bags, but as you can see, we've got a few little, almost like sacks. And imagine we didn't know how much was in each of these sacks, how many lollies, say. But we knew that there was X number of lollies and another 4 in each of those bags. What I'm drawing here is essentially 5 groups of X plus 4, which is what this is telling us here. This is the same as 5 times X plus 4. And we know that times there, another way of saying that is saying groups of. So I've got my 5 groups of X plus 4. And what we're going to do is just rewrite this in a different way. Because what I can see is if I just focus on my X term for a moment and count them up, you'll see that I've got 5 of them. So I've got 5 lots of X. I've also got, so in addition, I've got 5 groups of 4. So I can say 5 times 4. And in summary, instead of saying 5 times X, we know we write that as 5X. And 5 times 4 we know is 20. So I can also simplify that. So this process here, what I've just done, I've done it in 3 lines, but we can actually go straight from this line down to that line there. And what you might have seen last year, a little shortcut, we're definitely not going to be drawing 5 bags each time and then counting up how many of each term we have and then multiplying. That's not necessary. The reason I've done that is simply to show you why it is that we multiply each term by that number out the front. It is the same as saying 5 groups of each of those terms. So that's what our workings will look like, basically 5 times x plus 4. And what you might have seen done by another teacher perhaps is you might have seen them do something like this, just as a reminder that we do 5 times this one and then 5 times that one over there. I have seen that done a fair bit, which can be effective for some students, just as a visual reminder of the process that we're going through here, and that we do have that little time symbol in there. So we're left with 5x plus 20, no more brackets now, and obviously simplified. So you shouldn't be leaving it like this. This is not simplified. And that's obviously not what we do. We like to write things as succinctly as possible, as clearly as possible. And I'll just finish writing that sentence, simplified. Another one there was all positives. There was no negative terms in there. We'll get to one of those shortly. We'll just have a look at the second one I've got here. The only difference with this second one, apart from obviously the key terms, 9 and 2 are different, we've also got x minus 2 this time. Now, all that means is we have to consider that when we expand this, it's like we're multiplying by negative 2. Now, the reason that I like to do that is, so we're going to look at some shortly that have a negative out the front. And so when we do some like that, it's actually quite beneficial that when we multiply this part, that we consider it as not 2, but as negative 2. I'll show you what I mean. So first of all here, I'm going to do 9x, or 9 times x, but just write that as 9x. The next thing I'm going to do is multiply this 9 here, not by 2, but by negative 2. So 9 by negative 2 will give me negative 18. Now the reason I wanted to do that is essentially we're going to be taking away 18. Another way to look at it, of course, is that you know with your distributive law, which looks like this, I'll use the negative one, sorry. We know that that's going to expand to a times b, take away a times c. So that bit carries down there. Now I can do that with this one, 9x minus 2. I know it's going to be take away, obviously, but 9x there, and oops, and 9 2s are 18. So some people last year would have done a lot like this. You would have seen the negative and gone, okay, that means I've got a negative here. The reason that I want you to start thinking about this this term here with the operator in front of it, or the sign that's in front of it, is that we will be working with this number here as a negative. And when that is a negative, you'll see what happens shortly. We actually get a positive down here. So 9x minus 18 will be our solution to that one. Now, of course, it's not ideal to have a big box around here, and that we wouldn't normally do that, but I'm just doing that to show you that I don't look at it as 2, I look at it as negative 2, and once I multiply, if my result is negative, it's subtraction, and if my result is positive, it will be addition. Let's have a look at example number 3. The reason I put this one in here was because we have to consider that the term we have here may not be an x term, an x term on its own, I mean, may not be 1x we're multiplying, it might be 3x like we have here, or 7x, or negative 5x. It could be any coefficient. Remember this here we call the coefficient. We can have any number there with our x term as well. So with this one here, we'll do the same thing. I'm going to do 4 times 3x. And then I'm going to do 4 times positive 2, giving me positive 8, obviously, but I'll do that in a second. I just wrote it out slowly so you can see where I get my next term from. I'll do 4 by 3, giving me 12, but it's 4 by 3x, so that means I've got 12x. After that, I've got my positive 4 times 2, so positive 8. Again, you can or you don't need to put this second step in. I've just done that there so I can clearly show you how I got this 12x. You can, of course, go straight from this step here down to that one. There's no issue in doing that. Second last one now, because I'm just going to show you 5 examples. So in this second last one, you'll see we've got this lovely negative sitting right out the front here. And this is where it's important that we view that second term. View it with the operator in front of it, so with that sign in front of it. I'll do this first bit to begin with. We're doing negative 2 times by 4. So that's going to give us negative 8. Just put a little equals in front of that. The next thing I'm going to do is multiply the negative 2 by positive x. So negative by a positive will give me a negative. And so that means what I'll do is put a negative out like this. And then I've got 2 times x, so 2x. And so that will be our final result of our expansion just there. This last one is where it's most important that we view this second term with its sign in front of it. As you can see, we've got a negative here, but we've also got one just there. Let's see what happens. First of all, we're going to do negative 4 times positive 5. Remember, there's a positive just here. So that's going to give us a negative number since it's a negative by a positive, and 4 5s are 20. Oops, wrong one. Finally, what I'm going to do is multiply negative 4 by this term here, which is negative. The reason I want to be really careful when I'm working with this second term is when I've got a negative multiplied by a negative, I get a positive result. Negative times a negative gives me a positive, and 4 by x is 4x. As you can see, this is where I guess we can run into a little bit of trouble with expanding. Since we are working with negatives now, that does add a little bit of complexity. And so I want you to be super careful when you are working with your negatives. A, to notice them. It's very easy to ignore them sometimes, I know, you probably prefer to. But we want to first acknowledge that they're there. And then think really carefully about what we are multiplying. So remember, we are always multiplying this number here by each of the terms. So that term there, which could be negative at times. And then this second term, I want you to have a look at the sign in front of it and make sure that we examine if we have a negative out the front and a negative in the middle, that will become a positive number. Okay, I'll leave it there so that we've got some time to practice in class. And do make sure that you bring your questions with you as well, that you might have jotted down as we watched, or you might have them in your mind right now. So make sure that you do approach me and let me know.